Alrighty. Hi, everyone, and I hope that you're having a great Monday. For those of you being hit with the tons of snow, make sure you log your snow shoveling on Photocracy. I already did this morning. I had a very large amount of snow to shovel up before I could get to work. So I did log that. Took about 20 minutes, thankfully, because I had some help. So you can log that, and it is a decent amount of points. So don't forget. It's a great way to rack up your points there on Photocracy. All right, so let's get to it. The Q&A portion of the Hangout is turned on the side, so please ask any questions that you have as we're going along. There are a decent amount of questions submitted so far, and some of the answers are pretty descriptive, so let's get to them. Danny had a few questions, and the first one is about vitamin C. Danny has been making some fruit and vegetable like smoothies in her juicer, and was curious that if she's getting 400% of the daily amount of vitamin C. Is that too much? And then what happens if you get too much? Excuse me. All right, so in order to answer that question, I first want to provide some background about vitamin C. If you look at vitamin C in MyFitnessPal, that number is actually a percentage, and it's the percentage of what the RDA recommends. Those recommendations differ by gender and other circumstances like pregnancy or lactation. They change. And that percentage is also based on a set amount of calories. So the percentage is based on a 2,000 calorie diet. So if you're getting more or less than that, the number changes slightly. It's not huge. In general, with a 2,000 calorie diet, for adult men, the amount of vitamin C in milligrams is 75. For women, it's 65. However, if you smoke, you actually require 35 milligrams more per day. There are studies that show that smokers have lower vitamin C levels as a result of the smoke, and that secondhand smoke actually reduces the vitamin C you have in your body as well. The maximum recommended intake is 2,000 milligrams. That level of vitamin C is used to support the immune systems for elite athletes like Olympians or NFL players, or people temporarily increase their intake to 2,000 milligrams to reduce the duration of the common cold. So based on what Danny's saying, she's getting 400% of her recommended amount. 2,000 milligrams, which is the upper limit, is 3,000% of your daily recommended amount. Your 400% is only 260 milligrams. So it's really not that large of an amount. There are some side effects that occur if you take too much. Those side effects usually occur after you go over 500 milligrams, or in your case, it would be 800%. Because of that, what happens is after 500 milligrams, your body doesn't really absorb it very well. So those side effects are going to be indigestion, nausea, headache, fatigue, and it could disturb your sleep. Vitamin C is a vitamin that's water soluble. What that means is if you take too much and you're drinking sufficient amounts of water, you will pee out any excess that isn't absorbed. It doesn't protect you from any of the side effects in doing so, but it also means that it's unlikely for you to have a toxic amount of vitamin C unless you were doing something insane like getting 10,000 milligrams in one serving. But just over time, it's not something that's stored in your body because it's flushed out regularly with water. But with that said, I think getting 400% is fine. Since I mentioned that's really only 260 milligrams. That's something you may want to mention to your doctor the next time you're there that you've been getting 400% daily. Just because it's fine for one person, health is one of those things where you can paint broad strokes of this is fine for most people. But due to genetic differences and different ways people react to things, that may not apply to everyone. So for an example of that is, I'm sure you've heard that eggs are good, eggs are bad, eggs are good, eggs are bad. The reason that is that in general, cholesterol you eat does not increase the cholesterol in your body. And that applies to most people. However, there is a subset of the population who has their body cholesterol directly affected by the cholesterol they eat. So you can kind of paint a broad brush and say, in general, this is fine, but there's always exceptions. So because you don't really want to negatively impact your health, anytime you're concerned about something like that, it's certainly worth mentioning to your doctor just to kind of keep them informed as to what's going on with you and your health. And it's great that you're taking a more active interest in your vitamin intake. But that is kind of want to bring your doctor into the loop on that one. But in general, 400% is is well below the threshold for even side effects. So I doubt you'd see a problem there. So in a similar vein, Danny's next question was related to vitamin A. Danny says that she has a tough time getting vitamin A and wants to know how important vitamin A is to the body and if she should make an effort to get more of it in her diet. So, vitamin A is similar to vitamin C in MyFitnessPal in that it's a percentage of the recommended daily intake. So, for men, that number is 900 micrograms, which is 0.9 milligrams. And for women, that's 700 micrograms, 0.7 milligrams. Danny, I checked your tracker. I don't see you tracking vitamin A on there. So it's kind of hard to say where you stand on that since you didn't provide a number as to what you were currently getting. Just to give you an example, I added vitamin A to my tracker today, and I eat decent, I think it's 2 servings or 6 ounces of baby carrots a day. That puts me at 500% of the recommended intake. Vitamin A is a little bit different compared to other vitamins in that vitamin A from animal sources are more bioavailable. Vitamin A from plant sources generally come from beta carotene, and there's a conversion process to go from beta carotene to vitamin A. Different people are more efficient at that conversion than others. So while the number of vitamin A that carrots are supposed to get says I'm getting like 497% of my vitamin A from those carrots alone, but there's really no way to tell other than a fancy test to say how well I'm converting that. I've had my numbers, a full workup done, and I'm not having a problem with too much vitamin A myself. So I'm going to guess that either means that my conversion rate for beta carotene to vitamin A isn't that great. So that's kind of where it's hard to say. But animal sources are pretty much directly translatable. So some animal sources of vitamin A are going to be like cheese, eggs, butter, and liver. I know most people don't eat liver anymore, but it has the most vitamins out of any meat you can possibly get. Because of that, you don't want to eat it every day. It's not something you can eat every day because you possibly would get toxicity from certain vitamins. This is kind of like an aside in the story, trivia, if you will. But people that were exploring, I believe it was Antarctica, they had eaten polar bears. And the polar bear livers were so high in vitamin A that the people died because they reached the level of toxicity. So, that's something you kind of got to be careful with. You couldn't live on liver alone or you'd have too many vitamins. I know that's a weird problem to have, but yeah, that can happen. So I would say, Danny, that maybe check and add MyFitnessPal to track your vitamin A and kind of see where you stand and look and see if the sources that are contributing to that number are plant sources. And then there's really no easy way to tell if you're actually getting that amount or if they're animal sources. And then you kind of may want to watch that. It really just depends. The reason why that I'd be more concerned with vitamin A being too high as compared to vitamin C is that we said vitamin C was water soluble, meaning if you take in too much, you just pee it out. Vitamin A is fat soluble. And what that means is that, number one, you need enough fat in your diet to be able to absorb it. So what happens is the vitamin A binds to the fat in your body. So the problem with that is it doesn't simply go away. It's in the fat and it takes time to go away. So if you take in too much and it's stored in the fat and you take in more and more and more, that can kind of build up, and that's how toxicity can happen with vitamin A. You really don't want to mess around with vitamin A. I would never recommend you. As you know, I'm not really big on supplements. Very few, like fish oil and vitamin D and fiber, and that's pretty much the basis of what you need. If you're lifting weights, creatine is okay, but there are some side effects to creatine. Some people have experienced baldness. I'm already bald. I don't care, so I take creatine. But too little vitamin A can cause blindness, and that starts with being blind at nighttime, like night blindness. There are worse things that happen from having too little. I'm not going to go into the gory details. And big surprise, smoking or being around secondhand smoke can cause vitamin A deficiency, which leads to nighttime blindness and then eventually blindness and then worse. So other than vitamin A being fat soluble and then storing in your fat, too much vitamin A is definitely toxic. One of the things that puts you, because well, okay, vitamin A is processed in the liver, so if you drink excessively, you're also at a higher risk for having a toxic level of vitamin A because your liver can't handle it as well. I don't want to go into the awful details, but I'm sure you can imagine what if you start to have liver problems, all the problems that can kind of flow from that. So vitamin A is not something you want to supplement with on a whim. It's if you feel that you're under, check it out on MyFitnessPal, and again, bring it up with your doctor. You'll never hear me say supplement vitamin A ever. It's something you don't want to mess with. Um, that's really nothing you're going to need to mess with unless you're actually feeling side effects and you talk to your doctor and and having MyFitnessPal as a record of what you've eaten and they can see your vitamin levels. That's really helpful in helping to diagnose problems. I know since I kind of kept a food log all along, I took my food logs, printed them out with me to my doctor's appointments. And when I was experiencing certain things, they were able to eliminate diet as being a cause just by looking at what I was eating. So, all right. So to move on to the next question, Annie mentioned that she doesn't count green vegetables like spinach, kale, broccoli, etc., but asks if she should count every other vegetable. She gives some examples like avocados, tomatoes, carrots, cucumbers, and things like chia seeds, flax seeds, and goji berries. This is a great question because many people simply think that by choosing healthier options, they'll lose fat. And as we know, or should know, that calories are pretty much the most important thing as far as losing fat. The quality of those calories matter too, but in the end, it's the calories that are causing things to change on the scale. So out of all the fruits and vegetables you mentioned, I would say that anything other than spinach, kale, broccoli, cabbage, lettuce, cucumbers, green peppers, anything that's dark green, leafy, things like that, you don't really need to count them. They are going to be, the reason you don't count them is that they're like superfoods. They are low calorie, they're high in fiber, they're high in water content, they fill you up, and they have lots of nutrients and things like that. And like I said, there's not really a lot of calories in them to worry about. Foods like avocados, chia seeds, flax seeds are really calorically dense because in most of those cases, they have a high fat content. And that can add up really quickly. So if you were not counting avocados, chia seeds, or flax seeds, so just to crunch the numbers, let's just say an avocado is 250 calories. I think that's pretty close. A serving of chia seeds or flax seeds are like 140 calories per. If you had an avocado, a serving of chia seeds, and a serving of flax seeds and didn't count them, that's 500 calories or more. And if you're not counting them and you're sticking to the rest of your nutrition, spot on, 100% adherence, you're going to gain a pound a week by doing that, by not counting them. So that's something that, they're very calorically dense and you want to take into account. Carrots and tomatoes are not really too bad, but they do add up. I mentioned that I get 6 ounces of baby carrots a day. That's roughly 75, 80 calories of carrots. Tomatoes, depending on how many you have, it's about the same. They're not really too bad. If if to say you had like half of a tomato and 6 ounces of carrots a day, it may equate to like 100, 200 calories. But again, being 200 calories over what your intake is can actually cause weight gain. I personally track them because, like I said, they're not bad calorie wise, but they're definitely not the green veggies we don't want to count. They have a little bit more sugar and starches than green cruciferous vegetables. So I'd say count them for now. And if you kind of feel like that's not worth the effort because they're contributing so few calories, that's fine. Calorie counting is not an exact science. Macro counting is a little bit more exact. So if you noticed on MyFitnessPal, and I actually wanted to bring this up before, so this is a good opportunity. Sometimes the numbers on the calories don't match what the calories would be from the macros if you calculate it to yourself. So let's just say if you take the number of protein grams you have times 4, you add that to the number of carb grams you have times 4, and then you take the number of fat grams times 9, you add all three of those figures up, that should equal your calories. But many times the calories are lower when the food comes from a label. And that's because food manufacturers are allowed to round significantly. I can't think of a specific example offhand, but in many cases they round 20 to 30 calories off of a label when the actual calorie content comes from the macros and the calculations themselves that I mentioned. If that's something you'd like me to go more into, please let me know. I'll be more than happy to do that. I personally have specific macro goals that I try to stick to, and I don't count calories. I make sure I hit my macros, and then after I'm done hitting my macros for the day, I'll do the math and see where I landed calorie-wise, but I don't go off the number in MyFitnessPal. Now, with that said, that's a little intense, and I don't recommend that for anyone that is closer to the beginning of their journey or even in the middle. That's kind of when you're getting closer to the end of the journey, and let's just say last 10, 15 pounds, would you really ever need to worry about that? The differences are not major. And like I said, calorie counting and even macro counting is not an exact science because there are variations in serving sizes and individual fruits and vegetables and items, just so many differences that it's not precise. So really it's the habits. So if you're eating carrots every single day and you needed to reduce your calories to continue to lose weight, you'd probably want to take them from something that's not carrots anyways. So it really doesn't matter, if that makes sense. So like I said, if you wanted me to discuss that topic a little bit more, I can kind of go into detail beyond that with maybe some examples in the future. So that actually covers all of the pre-submitted questions. Let me kind of flip over and see if there are any additional ones asked. All right, I don't see any in the sidebar. Let me just check the groups real quick. Okay, I don't see any in the groups. Those were some good questions, Danny. Thank you. Yeah, that was I had to dig pretty deep and kind of verify a lot of my sources for that, so that was good. All right, well that's it for now, guys. Thank you everyone for watching. If you're watching live, and if not, if you're watching later, thanks again for watching there too. I hope that everyone has a great evening and a great week. Stay safe with all the snow out there. If you're somewhere lucky enough to get snow, and if you're not, enjoy your not snowy weather. And I'll be talking to everyone soon. Have a good night.